welcome everyone. We are so glad to have you here for our information session on digital transformation. My name is Melanie and I am from OSPE at the University of Waterloo. We're the Professional Development Lifelong Learning Department, sort of placed at the intersection of emerging technologies. And we're excited to have Peter joining us today to talk about our upcoming course that starts on October 19th on digital transformation. Just a few housekeeping notes for those of you who have just joined us. Please feel free to message us in the chat. You can send a message either to me directly, again, Melanie Haynes, or to Ethan or Emma, our colleagues at WatSpeed. We've all indicated WatSpeed in our names. If you have any questions or if you need any assistance, also feel free to put questions into the chat. We will be having a Q&A after the main presentation for the last 10-15 minutes or so. So feel free to send messages for questions in the chat as you think of them, or save them to the end, whichever you prefer. So we're glad to have Peter Carr leading this information session. He is a continuing lecturer from the Department of Management Sciences, and he has 18 years of experience consulting on digital transformation, so is the correct person to be discussing this topic today. Peter, if you wanted to go to the slide here for our land acknowledgement, we do want to just take a moment to do the land acknowledgement that the University of Waterloo acknowledges that our work takes place on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, and our main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, which is the land granted to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. There's an interesting link at the bottom of our land acknowledgement as well for further learning. So Peter, I'll turn it formally over to you, but again, here for anybody with questions in the chat throughout the day.
Thanks, Melanie, and thank you to all of you for attending the information session today. The purpose of this session is really to answer questions that you might have. There is a lot of information that is already available online about the digital transformation program. And this information session is an opportunity to fill in any gaps that you might have and to expand on areas that you might want to understand a little bit more about the program. But I have a few slides. I'll go through them as quickly as I can because I do want to make sure we've got time to discuss any questions you might have. So Melanie has given me a quick introduction. I do work at the University of Waterloo. I work in a number of areas that are particularly important, I think, as far as digital transformation is concerned. Project management and operations management, as well as entrepreneurship and the strategic management of technology are areas that I particularly focus on within the digital transformation world. If you want to know more about me, my LinkedIn profile is easily available online. It's publicly available. So go have a look. If you want to connect further and talk after the session, I'm very happy to connect with any of you through LinkedIn and continue our conversation. I did want really to introduce what we're talking about today by just reflecting on the way the world is changing and our experience over the last several days with the passing of Queen Elizabeth. I think has caused a period for many people to really look at what the period when she was queen meant and the way the world is now changing. Most people, I think, recognize that we're going through a period of great change at the moment. Sometimes it's referred to as the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and there are a number of elements to that. Just as we're concerned today with how organizations are changing, the changes that are happening in those organizations are taking place within broader changes in society as a whole. And those are driven often by technology. The change we're seeing often has an element that is influenced by technology. But it's also true to say that the world is changing beyond technology too. And I think it's important to understand that in terms of how organizations need to consider the changes they're going to make and manage those changes effectively, which is really what we want to achieve with digital transformation. So a number of characteristics of what we might call the revolution, the fourth industrial revolution that we're going through, certainly the importance of technology, globalization, our more integrated world, increased competition from most probably organizations, significant social challenges that many of us are, I think, aware of: political polarization, very rapidly rising cost of living and inflation, and many other social challenges today, economic challenges, which to some degree I've mentioned. And all of this has been accelerated by COVID-19. The changes that were already in motion were already taking place faster than change had taken place in much of our history, now started to happen even more quickly as a result of COVID-19. So we're really going through a significant period of disruption, perhaps emphasized by the passing of Queen Elizabeth. So for most organizations, digital transformation is happening. It is something that's going to influence their organization. 87% say they'll be disrupted, which is basically most of them. 92% believe that their current business model is not going to be sufficient to be able to be successful in today's world. But we're not very good at making these changes. For those that have tried to change, which is many of them, less than 30% actually succeed with their digital transformation projects. This is a shocking statistic to me. I'm sure it also, if you weren't already aware of the statistic, it would be a shocking one to you. And it's something that we really have to address. One of the significant challenges around digital transformation being successful is employee resistance. 76% of chief executive officers in organizations that have been pursuing digital change say that change would have been more successful with better management of the people side of that transformation. Sorry, I'm just going back to I'm going to try and go back to my previous slide. So if we can do that. And then finally, the objective clearly is to improve the probability of success. Engineers that we do a lot of work with at Waterloo are important to that, but clearly so too are many other people, everyone else in the organization. I'm now going to advance this. There we go. So the next few slides provide you with a little bit of data around what is happening with digital transformation at the moment. These statistics are from 2020, which is a long time ago to some degree in today's world. But these are the latest statistics that we have, and they give us an indication of the extent of the change. This first slide looks at the different technologies that are being adopted. One of the significant challenges that organizations face today is the wide range of choices about where they should focus their efforts as far as technology-based change is concerned. This slide shows that there are a large number of technological areas. There are others that could have been included in this study. And part of the challenge is really identifying what technologies are especially important to your own organization. And then if we move on to the next slide, what should you use them for? So there are these very basic questions which we address at the beginning of the digital transformation program. What are the range of possibilities as far as technology is concerned, as far as your choice of technologies is concerned? And then secondly, what are you going to do with them? So it's not simply a case of saying we're going to adopt a particular technology. It's also important, fairly clearly, to be able to know which areas of the organization those technologies are going to be applied in, and what are we going to do with them. So that is illustrated by the range of areas that are highlighted on this slide. Many areas that investments could be made. Once a project is undertaken, the challenges that emerge that contribute to the success rates that we see in digital transformation today have been the subject of many studies. This is one study from McKinsey, which highlights these areas. As you can see, these are often people or socially oriented. Skills gaps are a major problem, probably worse today than they were in 2020 when this study was undertaken. But getting the right skills to be able to support your digital transformation activity is a major challenge for most organizations. Cultural differences, I know, have already been mentioned in the chat to some degree. Cultural differences are ones which are frequently mentioned by organizations that are experiencing challenges with digital transformation. And these are very understandable. One of the fundamental aspects of digital transformation for organizations is that they're not used to radical change. Most organizations have been changing fairly slowly up until this point in their existence. They have management structures, they have cultures that are designed to support doing things largely the same way today as we did them yesterday. The skill, which is highly valued, is repeating in a reliable way what we do every day. The skill of radical or revolutionary change as far as organizations go is one that is not highly valued in most organizations. And that is really, I think, what lies often at the heart of the cultural differences that organizations try to overcome. And that's why it's so difficult. The whole organization is built around doing things the same way tomorrow as we did today. So traditional teams have often struggled to keep up with the pace of how digital teams work. Integrating technologies into their core architecture has been harder than previously thought, sometimes because of the messages that are communicated around this by the technology vendors. The speed of digital delivery and releases makes it difficult for the business to keep up, especially if you've modified those technologies in any way. Other areas of challenge, employees have struggled in their new roles. The change, despite the training they've received, has perhaps been too much for them. It's not been managed effectively. Cyber threats and cybersecurity remain very, very important. Newer ways of working have made it harder for organizations to operate smoothly. Governance and transparency have been reduced sometimes by new remote ways of working. This is something that many organizations are particularly struggling with this month as people come back to work after as COVID restrictions have been reduced. And finally, technology outages have been a continuing problem for many. So what this means is that leaders of digital transformation need to be good at a number of things that they were not necessarily good at in the past. McKinsey did a study a few years ago, which looked at the proportion of chief executive officers who had managed radical change inside their organization. And only about a third of them really had any experience of that. That's an illustration of the leadership gap which exists around digital transformation. But understanding the opportunities of digital transformation for your organization and the impact on the market that you exist in is something a leader needs to be able to do. They need to be able to have a familiarity with the new technologies, which many don't, and their application for business performance. They need to be able to create a strategic vision to understand the direction that the organization needs to go in, but also turn that into a roadmap, into a more detailed plan for how that might be achieved, clearly with the participation of people within their organization. They need to overcome the challenges, that some of which we've already talked about in implementation, and they need to be able to lead an organization that features innovation and continuous improvement. So those roles are now important for leaders of organizations. Some tips on overcoming some of the challenges that we've seen in digital transformation. These tips underlie some of the design of the program that I'll show you in a second. But first of all, a structured approach is necessary. We've seen a lot of discussion around agile versus predictive approaches to managing projects within organizations. Digital transformation requires an integration of activity across an organization. And there needs to be some structure, not saying for a second that agile is a bad approach to take, but at the same time, a structured approach that has clear design for integration and coordination across an organization is very important. The change which happens should be based on a market-focused vision. We start the digital transformation program looking at the external environment to the organization and about the design of the vision that your organization should pursue. It needs to effectively combine disciplines. Overcoming silos within organizations is essential. People need to be able to work together across disciplines to achieve effective change. Knowledge within the organization needs to be transformed. The understanding that people have of technological change and also the understanding they have in terms of people-related change needs to be greatly increased, and that needs to be part of the transformation in most organizations. So people need to be empowered to participate in and contribute to change themselves, but at the same time, leadership of that change remains important in order for it to be effectively integrated. So while we want to expand knowledge and empower employees, we want to ensure that they're accountable for that power within an environment where their understanding of the vision is very well developed. And then finally, all of these things I've mentioned need to be kept simple. Providing simple tools and simple frameworks and simple structures is necessary for the transformation to be successful. The program content that we've developed is based on engagement with industry. We've worked with a number of different companies, looking at what they're doing with digital transformation, participating in that transformation at times. Case studies from a wide range of sectors are included. There is a list of organizations that are featured here, or some of the organizations that are featured here. There are many more. So basically what we've done is to go out to organizations, interview people on video from those organizations, and feature their experience within the program that you are here to learn about. Okay, about the course, expert instruction to the degree that I'm an expert. Live teaching sessions via Zoom every Friday from 12 till 1. So the course is online, the program's online, but that does not mean that you're simply looking at a screen, watching content, submitting assignments. That is not what happens. There is live interaction with me and with your peers in the live teaching sessions on Zoom every Friday, and also in the discussion forums that we have as part of our learning environment. So peer discussions and networking opportunities that take place there around the course topics. Case studies that I've mentioned, you should expect that you'll need to do about 4 hours of work a week beyond the live session. And the program features a capstone project that integrates what you're learning in the program in a project within your own organization, or a project that is based on your own organization. You're going to learn a lot of things that you can see here. Examine the impact that technology will have for you. Look at the opportunities that technology might provide for your organization. Understand the common challenges, balance the human and organizational aspects of digital change. That is a fundamental element of the design of the program. Develop a plan to guide your own digital transformation activity. Explore innovative solutions. Use practical tools and techniques. And finally, develop your skills in digital literacy. I'm just coming to the end now for your questions. These are the modules. I know someone in the chat was asking about what the course subjects were. These are the 8 one-week modules in the program. First of all, looking overall, not so much in engineering, but at the 4th Industrial Revolution and the considering the impact it's having in the world. Second, digital transformation for your organization, providing a framework for understanding that. Looking at the range of technologies that are available today and providing a framework for selection for those for your organization. 4th, transformation in practice. This is where we focus on case studies from the organizations I've mentioned and more, and really understand what's happening in practice with digital transformation. 5th, creation of your own vision, turning that vision in the 6th module into a roadmap, a more detailed plan. 7th, considering the implementation challenges that you will face. And finally, innovation and continuous improvement, making the cultural changes and continuing the transformation beyond your initial transformation period. We should understand that digital transformation is something that continues. It doesn't just take place over a fixed period, but is something which becomes constant for the organization. So as part of the program, you develop your own transformation roadmap. You will work on that during the course. And the unique feature that we have in this program is that we also allow 1 hour of individual consulting time for each person in the program which can be used in a variety of ways to support your own digital transformation activity. So I have taken much longer than I would like, but I'll be happy to answer any questions now that you have, if I can.
We do have one question that came through the chat from David, which is it the structure of the organization that is resisting the change, or the human tendency to homeostasis driving that?
Probably a bit both. I don't think people naturally resist change. I do think the structure of the organization is often a factor. Certainly, one obvious element of that would be a siloed organization where it's just hard for people to work with each other between different functions and different departments. But on top of that, I think that I don't think people naturally resist change, but I do think people are smart. And in their experience, in their careers, whether with the organization they're with now or not, change has often been a negative thing for many people. It may have meant that some people lost their jobs. It may have meant that some people's jobs in some way were negatively impacted. And that causes people to be hesitant and to say, I really want to make sure I'm going to be okay here and that this is a good change. And so I don't think we should view the fact that people sometimes are initially hesitant about change, but we should understand that this is a reasonable response and one that we can address.
If we have other questions, feel free to put those into the chat or just come off mute. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Peter, for the presentation. I have one comment before I ask my question. I have been involved with PO for 20 some odd years, and today was the first time I saw the title of PL Eng, which was very interesting title to see that, and for limited license holder. My question is, although you touched the cybersecurity just once, but it didn't come up in the detail of the challenges or the overcome the challenges or the design program or other detail of the program that you mentioned, while we know that cybersecurity is one of the greatest challenges for digital transformation. I would like to know where cybersecurity is with your program in detail.
We don't cover the detail of how to do cybersecurity. It will vary a lot between different organizations, and the program itself isn't especially technologically focused or technically focused. So we're not providing advice on how to enable technologies to be integrated with each other or in terms of the technical aspects of cybersecurity. But it is emphasized as essential as part of digital transformation activity, and especially emphasized as that transformation activity progresses. So one of the challenges that organizations face is that they may consider it briefly at the beginning of a transformation. They'll consider cybersecurity, and then they don't talk about it after that. They think that's it, covered off. So in answer to your question, it isn't covered in a technical sense, but it is covered in a more tactical, I guess, sense of wanting to ensure that it's part of the strategy.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
We've got a couple more that have come in through the chat. So Karina has asked, do you have some tips for seeking stakeholder buy-in on transformation plans?
Yes, I mean, I think it's actually to go out and talk and listen to people. So one of the things I did over the last several years was to develop a simulation in stakeholder management for project management. It's an area that has received increasing emphasis because of the difficulties that your question may indicate. There is a strong sense that management of stakeholders has been very poor in projects. And we continue to see that. I see it in with people I work with. I will often look at the work they're doing on a transformation project and see that there isn't the extent of consultation and engagement with stakeholders that there should be. So, I mean, I think the first thing is really to make sure you know who all of the appropriate stakeholders are that you should be talking to. Usually, and I'll use the word very carefully, usually there is not that extent of identification of stakeholders. The group that is considered as being stakeholders is not anything like as big as it should be. Once that has been, once you've done that, it's the point at which you are going to engage with them. And there the advice would be usually as early as possible, but at the same time to recognize that different stakeholders have different interests as a project proceeds. And so and so being conscious of that, taking a strategic approach where you say at this point in the project, these stakeholders are going to be more important, and it's going to be more important that I engage with them, is also, I think, advice that might be useful. Finally, technology helps us do this a lot easier than we could do it before, and looking at the opportunities there are there to create engagement is also, I think, something that might be helpful. I see another question there, Melanie.
Around the marketing about the need for digital transformation versus what can be realized. And will the course cover that and how to discern value-added transformation? So that's the question from David there.
Yeah, the program's designed to address that, David. Partly what we saw was that technology vendors have a very positive message around digital transformation. The ease of implementation of technology is I think exaggerated to some often. The challenges that are faced are minimized. And so what we wanted to do was to create a program which appropriately, not overly negatively or overly positively, but appropriately identified the way that digital transformation should be viewed, appropriately acknowledged and incorporated the challenges that would be faced, and provided a framework in order to address a realistic approach to digital transformation itself. So I think that is the way we've designed the program is in line with what you are asking about, David. So we start by creating a realistic vision, providing a way to develop that, but then break that down into practical steps and look at the common challenges that will be faced in making those successful. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, David, but that I think is how I would respond. If you want me to respond further, please contribute.
David says thanks. So I think hopefully that covered it. I do feel like that maybe ties in with the next question, which is, are the case studies in the program real cases? So are they the idealized version of what could be, or are these real case studies showing the real challenges that people have actually experienced?
They're real cases in the sense that I have interviewed the people who were, I guess, key in that in the transformation that was made. So I went to the organizations and I looked for the person who could provide a good description of what had happened and be able to answer the questions that I had. And I asked them questions that I thought were appropriately probing to get to the things that we wanted to know. And so I think the case studies are, well, the case studies are real to the extent that the interviewees may have wanted to present positively what their experience had been. I think there's probably some of that inside the case studies, but at the same time, I tried to ask questions that would go beyond that. And I think the interviewees recognized that they were providing the cases for use in a university program. And I think that led them to be a bit more candid than they might have been if they were presenting at a nice conference somewhere.
I don't see any more questions in the chat. So again, please feel free to put in your questions in the chat or come on camera or just unmute, use the raise hand feature, however you prefer. But while we give people a moment to do so, I did see a comment earlier on about being interested in hearing about people on a similar journey. So when you're undertaking such a large scale project, it's beneficial to just have an opportunity to speak with others who might be in the same process, encountering the same difficulties. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the discussion feature in the course or the opportunity for participants to interact with each other.
Yeah, there are various ways that we can use technology in education. As far as the design of a course is concerned. And I mentioned earlier that we don't simply present material online, as is done with some courses, but that isn't what we do with technology in this course. The emphasis on the use of technology is in achieving that interaction that the questioner was asking about, Melanie. So the activity that you engage in the course requires you to interact with other people, not in ways I don't think that will make you especially uncomfortable, where you're not forced to, have a discussion that you won't like. But at the same time, the discussion applies what you're learning in the course. So each week you are provided with practical tools in most weeks of the course that you then can apply in your own organization and share your experience of applying that with others in the program. So every week there is interaction between people who are participating in the program.
Great, thank you. We do have another question that's come through the chat from Tetsu. Do you have case studies for government agencies, academic organizations, and NPOs? Also for international or outside of Canada or the US? So more questions about the nature of the case studies themselves.
Yep, we do is the answer to that. The Estonian government is one that I remember at the moment that is a case study in the course. There are other government cases that I've created, which aren't included in the course at the moment, but certainly that I can bring in if there is a requirement for that. I have around 200 interviews that I've conducted with organizations. You'll find those on my YouTube channel. It's not hard to find. That are focused on various aspects of technological change. You're welcome to have a look at that, and you'll see the types of areas that are covered. Beyond Canada, yes, some of the organizations that are considered are in the US. Boeing is one of those. Boeing the interviewee is from Los Angeles. And there are others from other parts, from other places. So the cases which are in the program now are fairly diverse. They cover a range of industries and different organization types. But there's also a reserve bank behind that for any areas that people are particularly interested in, where we could go a little bit more deeply, probably.
We've got another one that just came in. Let me just take a look. So as part of managing digital transformation, how can leaders encourage more tech for good collaboration, public-private partnerships, or major initiatives to leverage Canadian scale-up and startup solutions to accelerate innovation and drive revenue/job growth in the Canadian tech ecosystem? So that's a lengthy one that's come in from Bob there.
I think that's very important, Bob. I think it is increasingly important that organizations do this. The changes that we're seeing in the world at the moment require all of us to contribute to ensure that the world moves in a good direction. And the types of things that you're mentioning, Bob, are I think important in doing this. So for larger organizations to be encouraging local startups is certainly one way they can do that, to be favoring local businesses that are that will benefit their own community, to be contributing and participating themselves in the work of local NGOs that can improve their community would be ways of helping with that too. I think there are many, many ways that this can be done, and we certainly do that at Waterloo. One example I've got is in one of my courses. At the moment, we're working with an NGO in Pakistan to develop a library for teachers, an online library of free resources to be used by teachers in Pakistan. We're also looking there at the moment at perhaps doing work around connectivity in Indigenous communities in Canada. So that's at a very early stage. If any of you, I'll use this opportunity to just ask if any of you have any experience in that area. I would love to talk to you. So Bob, I'd love to be able to give a fuller answer, but really the main thing I want to do is to say, yes, what you're asking about is very important, and it should happen more.
Thanks, Peter. That was great.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for your question, Bob.
I saw many comments when people were joining around the people side. So there's one thing to know about the technologies, but it seems like where 30% of that 30% success rate is maybe due to the people side. So can you talk a little bit more about the course's approach to the people side of digital transformation and overcoming that barrier?
Yeah, we cover that in a number of areas inside the course. We have one module which is specifically focused on innovation and continuous improvement, which are important. But we take what we call a socio-technical approach to everything that is covered inside the program. That combination of people and technology is, I think, is extremely important. It's focused on in the case studies in Module 4. It's focused on in the folk focus we have on the development of the organization's vision, the development of the roadmap and what should be included in the roadmap. That we have a framework for that, which covers both human and technical aspects. So that desire, need to effectively integrate technology and people is really one of the fundamental characteristics of the design of the program.
I have put the link to our website into the chat and our email address to reach out to WattSpeed if you do have additional questions. We do have a few moments left, and I want to make sure that if people do have additional questions that we get to those. So please don't be shy. Don't hesitate to speak up, but if you prefer, you can also email wattspeed@uwaterloo.ca at any time. And we'd love to hear from you there as well. But if anybody does have any additional questions before we wrap up, please don't hesitate.
And if any of you want to connect on LinkedIn, some of you might have joined later. I mentioned this at the beginning. Do send me a connection. I'm happy to continue our discussion there. You're asking, Changiz, are there any discounts for OSPE members? I think there are, but Melanie might know better than me.
I can send those details via email for sure. And I do also want to point out for those with the engineering background, upon successful completion of the course, there are 40 continuing professional development or CPD hours from the Ontario Engineering Academy as part of OSPE. So for those that is applicable to on the call, that's something to know about as well. But I'll certainly follow up about the discount as well.
Yeah, Emma has posted a link in the chat there, Changiz.
Thanks, Emma.
To tell you about, and about other available discounts maybe too. I don't know if there may be other opportunities. There may not.
I'm seeing some thank yous come into the chat, so looks like perhaps we don't have further questions, but please feel free if something comes to you. Thank you, Jamie, in the chat. Yes, there's a discount for existing members and a discount if you become an OSPE member upon registration as well.
And we should point out that you do not need to be an engineer to join the program. The program is designed for people from a wide range of backgrounds. Okay.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you for Peter for spending your lunch hour with us and providing such an informative and comprehensive presentation.